What's up, my friends? Welcome into another episode of Vision Pros Live. We're going to be talking about financial mistakes that limit your business growth. And I wanted to have Brandon Moon here so badly today. This guy is a champion. And when I say that, there are thousands of people who've been on the show and involved with Vision Pros Live, and there's very few that I want to recruit for the first class business brand and make sure they're working side by side with us. Brandon and his business partner, Raphael. I want them to join us. And so we're going to get him back on the show. He had some IT difficulties today, wasn't able to get in, but we got so much to deliver in terms of what you can do as a business owner and as a visionary in order to make sure that you have all the preparedness necessary to win when you're launching your initiatives and building your visions. And so, again, one of the things that you can do is make sure that you're surrounding yourself with awesome people. And so I do recommend going to Brandon's website, tdpineadvisors.com. That's TD as in touchdown, pineadvisors.com. Check out why it is that I might want to partner with them, why it is that I would consider bringing them into the fold at First Class Business and seeing what's possible with them. And we're going to meet next week regarding that in greater depth. But today we started to talk about strategies that will help us with profitability, building out, growing our profit margins as well, and making sure that we're offering the right solutions for the right people. Super, super great guy, by the way. All right. So diving into how financial strategy impacts business performance, I think it's so important to work with a strategist who knows what they're doing. If you've been a visionary for a long time, you can probably relate to this. It doesn't take me more than a 5-minute conversation to know whether the person that I'm talking to is somebody who I'm going to trust with my legacy or not. And I also know better after 5 and 10 years of working in business. Like I can't do this alone. I need other great minds by my side. I need people who can see the blind spots I have, and I need to be able to acknowledge those in order to make sure that I'm building well. And I'll go back to one principle that matters with this, and that's they say begin with the end in mind. I think that is a super important piece of making sure that you know where it is that you want to get to and what you want the end of your life to look like. But I'll also add to it, begin with the vision in mind. And what does that mean? Well, think about it. If I'm in the desert and I cannot see anything but sand dunes, then no, I don't necessarily benefit from my end goal of, hey, I want a family. I want to be able to have financial freedom. I just need a glass of water if I'm stuck in the desert. And when you get to the top of the next sand dune, you then have a new vision. Your vision changes completely. And now you might see an oasis, you might see a city, you might see a jungle, and you might see more desert somewhere else. And so now you have options and things change. I see so many professionals who may not be able to see the end game and say, you know what, I can't really relate to those who are ultra successful. And if you're in the desert, it makes sense. I get that. And so don't worry too much about defining the end game and obsessing over the destination. They say enjoy the journey. Sometimes it's hard to enjoy. The journey can be very, very hard. But if you can remember the importance of expanding your vision, looking up beyond what's right in front of you, understanding how to, let's go deep in the symbolism, how to study the stars along the way, and how to recognize clues of, are you going in a circle or are you escaping the situation that you're in? There's so many opportunities to look at your life from a strategic lens. And if you try to do that by yourself, or you just try to do that with AI, then unfortunately you're probably going to end up right back where you started or in a worse position. It's super important to include people who can see ahead of where it is that you're headed. So why do many companies struggle with clarity? I'll speak from my own personal experience on this. I mean, I can't speak from anybody else's, but for me, I was too focused on the destination for a long time. Two, I was dedicated to an extent to the principles, but I didn't realize how behind I was in certain areas. For instance, I struggled with leadership. I was just talented. And as a talented individual, I got put in leadership roles, but I didn't understand how to be a caring leader. I was a caring person, but I didn't understand how to be a caring leader. And so there are little elements like that that can block our way. Some of the greatest entrepreneurs I've worked with, I won't name names on this one because I'm going to call out what was causing them to struggle with clarity. Some, again, were obsessed with a metric or a goal, like hitting the top fastest growing list of companies of that year. Others, I'll pick on Jake Larson for this. It was a great thing as a video power. he had such great self-awareness, and he wanted to put his family first. And because of that, he decided to shrink down the company, for a few years. That's beautiful. And part of that was he was gaining clarity for other aspects of his life. And he's one of the best entrepreneurs I've ever worked with. So clarity can sometimes be a blessing, and it can be something that, our lack of clarity can be a moment where you get to meditate on what's next for yourself in this environment. Another reason why I believe most entrepreneurs lack clarity, this probably applies to you who's listening, and visionaries, is you don't value building a true team. And you don't know how to lean into attracting great leaders to be by your side. Too many people want to hang on to the little grape that they have, and they don't want to give portions of it away. But some of the best leaders in the world do a great job of providing equity and expanding the size of the pie, and realizing that I'd rather have part of a watermelon than an entire grape. I think Mark Cuban is famous for that quote. And so it's super important that we recognize that if you're trying to control your vision by yourself and you're not leaning into executive help from others, then your clarity is going to be limited because you can only see so much. As a person, we have incredible blind spots as human beings, especially when it comes to serving others. We're not psychological wizards. We've got to understand how audiences work, what motivates people, why do certain things motivate others and not motivate us. There's so many factors that we need to be prepared for. And I feel sorry for the entrepreneurs who continue to try to do it by themselves or with a small team, or they try to upgrade their executive assistant or their right-hand man into 20 more roles on top of what they have, or position them as directors prematurely, or chiefs with no track record of being able to do that. It's like I can't just go into a surgeon's office and start acting like I can do surgery because I've watched enough surgery on TV, or even the nurse who's been supporting for 10 years probably isn't qualified to do most of the things necessary for that role. And so the same reality applies to building brands and building visions. We need people who have adequate experience or adequate humility as well in order to create a very strong team environment. So how about leaders, and how can leaders make more informed decisions to support sustainable growth? For myself, slowing down and listening to my team. And when I say listening to my team, I mean like taking the real time to ask my team to dive into the details, to gain confidence with me, to be able to put conflict into existence with what we're doing, and respect that while my self-assuredness as an entrepreneur, as a visionary, like sometimes wants to override what other people are trying to say, especially if it conflicts with I've got to learn to bridle my passion on that. I've got to learn to harness that and really open up for, well, tell me more about, what is it that you see? And what is it that, how would this contribute? And can you work with AI to create a report for how this can affect us and other case studies that exist in the world, right? Empowering my team to be able to make informed decisions on my behalf. And then, Dan Martell's got a great system on this called 131. If they got one problem, or let's call it an opportunity, they can go find 3 solutions themselves for how would they solve it, or what would they do? And then they can bring me back the one that they suggest, the one that they recommend based on what they studied. And then we get to have great dialogues around that. It's so important to include our team. And most of my team members, my friends, started in a role. Well, one, they didn't even know what virtual assistants were. And they live in developing countries throughout the world. And they also, most of them speak Spanish only. And so we dialogue in Spanish about these realities. So I'm not talking about hiring people who cost $12,000 a month, any benefits and beyond. And I'm also not putting that down, but I am pivoting on purpose to, I don't see enough people uh, really valuing the insights available from their virtual assistants. And I will say that I have a harder time with this with my counterparts that live back east. Anybody that's from India, Pakistan, Philippines, and I apologize for saying it for those who have passed this bar, but there's a cultural development that has occurred due to the abuse that they have faced from North American companies who hire them and don't care about their feelings and don't care about what they want. And they just want a 5-star focused professional who will just do the job and get out of the way. And that creates an environment where those individuals become yes men. and they know when to say yes and when to say no, and they know exactly what they need to do in order to sustain the paycheck. And so it can be very, very hard to train them out of that mentality and to get the truth out of them of like, what do you really believe? Because they know they have to protect their paycheck. On the flip side, when I'm working with my South American counterparts, there's an openness and there's a trust. There's a, you know what? I don't understand how this works. And because they don't speak English, they don't have the propensity to say, well, yes, I understood everything. Yes, I understood. How many times have you been in a situation or you've been working with somebody that doesn't have proficient English, American English, and you don't want to challenge it. You don't want to make them feel bad. You don't want to say they don't speak English because they do speak English, but you give all the clarity possible and the project still goes south or they don't hit the mark on it. And a lot of that has to do with what I'll call a lack of humility in relation to communication and a lack of systems where the entrepreneurs they've worked with have continued to just press and press and press and push. And then they just have to get job after job because they never really understand how to communicate well. Well, again, I don't have to face that when I'm working with Central American, South American counterparts. They're usually very honest and open, like, I don't get it. And like, or you can tell that they don't get it. And you ask them to repeat it back, and they can't really repeat it back. And so it gives me a protection where we're not rushing projects forward. We're truly collaborating about what's possible. And then at the end of the day, we get to also use AI to make sure that what we're doing is on point. And that sounds perhaps the formula and the framework is a bit boring and requires some hard work. Welcome to sustainability with growth. So I'm going to take a quick break real quick and come back. We're going to dive in a little bit deeper into what we talked about the agenda would be. And again, I'll also give a couple shout outs through of what Brandon Moon taught me in our last couple of conversations. Again, we are in a process of we've been talking for a couple of hours spread out over a couple of months, where we've also put a couple of hours individually into research of how we might work together. And my friends, that one of the best things that you can do for building out your visions is recognizing that visions require capital. And capital, the easiest way to gain capital in life is to run a business. And I say easiest. It's not easy at all, but that's how you expand visions and how you move them forward. But what do you need to do that? I highly recommend starting to prepare to recruit teams. It's super important. If you want to avoid the greatest financial mistake that limits business growth, learn how to bring team members in who understand ROI, productivity, and profitability. And we're going to dive a little bit further into that and some super secret sauce in just a minute. All right, welcome in to Vision Pros Live with Jackson Callum. I'm your show host. We'll be doing interviews for visionary entrepreneurs and guest leaders who are building fantastic visions out there. Hey, what's up, my friends? Jackson Callum here, show host of Vision Pros Live, and I'm diving right into financial mistakes that limit your business growth, your vision growth. And this is like, think about it, I've been doing business since I was 21 years old. I'm 38 now. What is that? 17 years of as a co-founder, business owner, understanding and seeing all the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I just want to reveal as much as I can for you so that your path is safer, more secure, more sustainable than mine has been. We've been through ups and downs. You can never protect yourself from those completely because there are elements way outside your control. You don't know when the next conflict is going to exist between countries. You can't predict when the next illness is going to hit, whether it's yourself or the economy at large. There's so many things that can happen, from natural disasters to life experiences that completely disrupt what you might be doing. But what we can stay true to are our principles. And thank you for writing the book, Ray Dalio. I've never read it, but I'm a big fan of the idea and the reality that I'm definitely dedicated to principles. And if I stick to my principles and I abide by those every day, then I can create the best life for myself. And that's one of the greatest secrets is being able to focus on just creating my best life. Even if Instagram shows somebody else's life looks better, even if other businesses seem to be creating or receiving more external outcomes than I am, I don't need to abandon my principles. Tactics are important too. I'm not saying they're not, but I see too many people focused on tactics alone. And you can tell, you can tell when a kid is saying thank you, like just to say thank you, because they know that the tactic works, versus a child who's truly grateful. And we can usually see it with adults too, by the way, especially if you've really dedicated yourself to the principal side of things. And so, one resource that I recommend two resources I recommend diving into is AI Mavericks with Scott Simpson and Austin Armstrong. They are doing some advanced stuff with AI, and they're after the roller coaster of like leading the way. And so I actually am a member of AI Mavericks. I pay for that. They don't pay me for sponsorships. We actually promote them because I like the resource, and I want other people to understand that that's where I would go if I was looking at the advanced stuff. We too have the AI marketplace. If you go to ai.firstclassbusiness.io/depth, DEPTH, you'll find our secret page about why it's important to align with us or other leaders who understand the value of leadership, productivity, and profitability in relation to AI and how to use AI. I see very few individuals using it in a way that drives results. I do see a lot of people using it in ways that are helping them think that they can become very quick winners in professional tasks or weaknesses they may have, and they don't know enough to be great with it. They know enough to be dangerous with it, and it's probably going to hurt their life. They'll learn some valuable and important lessons along the way, but I'd rather learn how to use AI appropriately in a way that's going to drive productivity and profitability in my life sooner than later, in a way that doesn't hurt me or other people. And so be wise as you use AI. And then there's the Water Project. Please check out the Water Project. We're not affiliated with it, but I love helping people as much as possible. And when I realize there's millions of people who don't have access to clean drinking water, like that's one of the easiest resources that most of us take for granted. I found out you could pay $10 towards one of these campaigns and actually see it come to fruition because of how transparent they are. So as long as I'm going to rock this microphone and help people with their building their visions, I'm also going to encourage people to try to step into projects like that. And if you know of a cause that you would like to see me support, by all means, please send it to us. I'd love to see. I will take a look at any cause that people bring up, and maybe there's a day where people send me 100 causes per day, and now I can't look at all of them. But for now, like, let me see your cause. Let me see what I can do. It would be really fun to see if I can help. So right back to helping every single one of you. The common financial mistakes that limit business growth. One other big common financial mistake. There's not very many businesses that go out of business because they have too much money. They have too much capital, right? But I see way too many entrepreneurs who don't have any money constantly admitting and saying, I don't have any money. I can't invest in this. No, I can't afford that. Rather than opening their minds to the reality of like, why are you putting a law of scarcity in your way when you could be able to say, like, how do I get the money? Right? What capital opportunities exist around me? How do I lean into those? It is really, really sad how many business owners refuse to explore that. And it's not about exploring with me. Explore by yourself, right? So there might be a trust factor, right, where they don't know who to talk to about those things. But if you're scared to talk about finances and moving your business forward, then that's a massive financial mistake. There's so many opportunities that exist out there. So the second mistake, on the polar opposite end of that, if you go and explore financial options and you just jump at the first financial opportunity you have, or you're opening credit cards with massive amounts of massive interest rates, like you can really put yourself in a bind too. So we've got to be careful not to dive into the extremes. That would be another common mistake that I see taking place amongst those who are founders, visionaries, etc. Is they limit business growth because they dive into the polarizing realities that the common world, let's say, and news we're seeing all the time. We see hyperbole, we see superlatives popping out. And what does that mean? People who say you should never do this, you can't do this, you must do this, we have to do this, this always happens, this never happens. That type of thought process, if those types of words come out of your mouth, they create an existence. Like you're literally creating an existence for yourself. And so learning how to, again, lean in towards harmony, lean in towards balance, recognize that I could do this, but I don't have to. Not I should, because we don't know if we should or not. That's just us playing God, right? I need that. We love to use the word need, when in reality it's a want. And so if we can really discipline our language, as well as discipline our ability to check out what financial opportunities exist, we can put ourselves in a far more powerful position in order to drive growth. And that's one of the principles that I saw as I was interviewing Brandon Moon. My friends, I put our guests through the ringer when they are professionals. I have to check the due diligence. I have to make sure they know what they're talking about. I have to make sure that the stories align. And so we had a very, very strong conversation where I got to listen to him talk about his depth with taking over his grandpa's business, and how he went about that and the hoops he had to jump through with grandpa. I got to hear about how he negotiated with a brand that he was buying in another state, and how he jumped on a plane and he brought donuts that morning, how he didn't win the deal, but then he went back to the drawing board and was able to work out the deal and make it happen. And the little principles and nuances and stories like that, again, when we're able to assess and see, is this person posturing? Is this person telling the truth? Are they inflating the reality of the story? Are they willing to share details about the experience? I was working with Brandon Moon specifically to see, is this guy legitimate? Does this guy actually have what it takes to guide our visionaries? And so, while again, he couldn't be here today, I'll get him on a future episode, but those are all principles that help, that we need to be looking at if we really want to help people understand the value of moving beyond financial mistakes and running visions the right way. So if you're not a visionary, or rather you don't see yourself as one, but you're an integrator or somebody who helps people build, this is phenomenal advice for you too. This is the opportunity to step in and say, how do I help the entrepreneur I'm working with create more balance, create more sustainability, so that all of us win better? All right. So how financial clarity improves decision making? Well, that's really easy to see at videopower.com. And so I used to work there full time. It was an awesome opportunity. We had something called the Revenue Growth Workbook. And in that workbook, I'm going to share with you how I've turned that into the revenue growth system right now, so you guys can see that. And I believe it's, you know what, we'll just open the page live. So, you know what, we're going to go right to the ROI calculator. Okay. So this calculator is something that I use for every single project that I work on with our clients, where we also help build sustainable revenue growth. And it helps me understand, it's always helped me understand the metrics, and how to diagnose and forecast potential results, the importance of having high ticket close offers or profit maximizers, email nurturing campaigns as well, and understanding every single line item on here. How do we impact these? How when we spend $4,000 on an advertisement in this case, how do we make sure that we don't have a super expensive cost per view? And how do we make sure that we can get down to the 1 cent level cost per view? And so that when we spend $4,000, we end up making a gross return of 62,000. Is that even possible? You can verify this against AI. And careful, because AI will manipulate and lie sometimes, but always ask it to find legitimate peer-reviewed case studies. And that can be one way to help you make sure that it starts to put you on point. Click-through rates. Click-through rates are normally 1 to 2.5% per industry, but we've got clients that get 7 to 13% click-through rates. And if you get a great click-through rate on a campaign where you're getting a 4 cent cost per view, and your other metrics also hold true, then you can win super well. And that's why Starbucks has a location on almost every corner of the world. But if your lead capture system doesn't exist, or you're only getting a 1% opt-in rate, and you don't have offers where you can also offset the cost of your advertising, then you can put yourself in a position where you don't end up getting anybody to move forward. But I also want to highlight something real quick for visionaries who may feel like, well, I just lost $4,000. No, I didn't lose $4,000. Only if I never think through what lessons did I learn in this process, right? And so if I spent $4,000 on an advertisement and I got a 4 cent cost per view, 100,000 people saw my ad campaign, and 7% click through, but they got to whatever lead capture or landing page I have, and almost nobody opted in on that, then for some reason, people felt that what I was offering was what we'd call a bait and switch. And so I learned through the $4,000 spent that this asset, or my approach to try to inspire people and invite people forward, that didn't work. So I learned something valuable. And if I then change and update my landing page or my messaging a bit, and I still maintain the same thing, and I spend another $4,000 on this, and I end up getting 1,400 leads this time, as you can see, I still didn't make money on this campaign. I still lost money. But that $4,000 lesson now puts me in the next position to see that, okay, well, maybe I do need to offer something down here again. And if I improve what I'm offering at the next stage, oh man, it's amazing how I went and now I'm spending another 4,000, and this time I made 40,000 if the rest of the metrics hold true. And it's my job and responsibility to be a wise steward for my company and understand how this works. So I'll come back to the screen out for each of you. This is one element, of many elements that exist in businesses for being able to use financial clarity to improve my decision making. I then am able to see through the advertising and through the results on that exactly what aspects of my funnels, what metrics, what key performance indicators I should dive into in order to optimize the type of outcome that I want to achieve for myself and for those that my brand serves. Another guest came on recently, Larry Mandelberg. My gosh, that guy knows his stuff. And we were talking about how so many businesses try to track their business based on the lag indicators. Again, if you don't know this stuff, go to AI and ask it to explain the basics. I do it all the time with things that I'm learning that are new. And so the lag indicators, and he talked about how revenue is not a lead indicator. It is not, you don't know if your business is successful based on how much you're making. There are other principles you have to dive into. And if you ask AI, it will help. If you go to Larry, he will also help with this reality. And you start to see what are the components that I can be looking at on the front end for clarity to make sure that my decisions are also amplifying my finances. Super, super important to understand the difference between lag indicators and lead indicators. And again, AI can give you a brief on that and help you understand that so you can use that to your advantage moving forward. Now let's talk about the role of leadership in financial strategy a bit. So there's again a lot of angles we can dive into. I'm going to dive into angles that have helped me most on my process. So the role of leadership. I was a bad leader, my friends. I didn't really know how to be there for my team. I didn't know how to listen as well as I could have. I didn't know how to empower them to speak up either. There are frameworks that exist. I've already shared a few of those. But when it comes to your financial strategy, you can't just put it in the hands of the CFO. That's a bad idea to put it in the hands of any one person. You, as the COO, the person who's in charge of operations, they should have an opinion related to the budget. Your chief executive officer, the person who's in charge of executing plans, in charge of bringing the whole vision, that person has to have some input. But you also do want somebody who understands finances, and usually the CFO is somebody who is risk averse, that they're there to protect your finances. And so they're not the final decision maker, but it's also really helpful when you can get a financial advisor who's not scared and who's not acting like somebody who is preparing you for a safe house, right? It's good to have a safe house, but you don't live in it, not unless there's a zombie apocalypse, right? So we can't treat our business based on principles of safe houses, or we're going to create a scarcity reality for what it is we're doing. And so I also have a governing body for my company. This is one of the greatest things I've ever built. I've always wanted to build it. I need it because I'm a big fan of the quote that terrifies me. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So I don't make the decisions at my company anymore. And I'm super, super grateful for that because, man, it sucked to be the one who's in charge of what decisions are going to move forward. And it all comes back on you. And at the end of the day, it still falls on me. But now I've got other people helping me carry the burden of that. And so Zach Gagnon is he owns 5% of my company. He's not available for day to day because he's also got his own opportunity, but he's like our magic wand for technology stuff. When something goes wrong that our team doesn't understand, we consult him and bring him in. But Zach is somebody I trust as an amazing individual, an amazing leader. Cynthia Ochavano as well, out of Peru. She was our lead designer back in the day. She now helps me on most of our communication for our podcasting. She's been a host of Opportunities Latinas. And we've got Maria Victoria, who is our department design head. And she's also one of the most organized people I've ever met. But these are people who are super loving. They're super patient. They're incredibly persistent. They're also consistent, and they're reliable in almost everything they do. And the four of us make up the governing body of First Class Business and all related umbrella companies that are there. And if we ever get in a situation where, let's say Maria Victoria and I vote and yes, and Cynthia and Zach vote no, we also then decide as a group, who are we going to bring in as our intermediary, the person who's going to break the tie. Having people like that by my side, who I've been building with for years, whose values I trust, who understand how we go about designing our success for our companies, is imperative for our growth. So the role of leadership and financial strategy, yes, they do get involved when we need to talk about finances. Now, another neat financial piece, so that's on the high end. Every big decision that we make, I do not make on my own. I will always go through them. If we're hiring people, they are involved in the process of bringing those people in. If we're going to switch systems, they are involved in the process of being able to help us make sure that we move that. But we also try to empower every single person in our company to think like an executive, prepare for executive behaviors, and everybody who comes into first class business has to read the 5 dysfunctions of a team within the first 3 weeks of being involved in our company. I love that book. Patrick Lencioni does an amazing job of teaching people how to transition from the typical dysfunctional environments to functional teams and championship behaviors. So that where do we go for the next one on that? We have a new program in place. I don't know if you've noticed, but our channel has gone from 100 subscribers to over 10,000 subscribers over the last 2 months. We gained the first 100 subscribers over 3 years. Okay. We put a new advertising strategy in place. And part of the advertising strategy is our guests have the opportunity to commit $100 to the show, and $50 goes towards their specific episode to promote them. Excuse me. The other $50, and this is where we're going to the role of leadership and financial strategy. The other $50 goes into a bank account that my South American counterparts then get to decide for themselves, what do we do with this $50 in order to promote the show experience and our brand? And so we're empowering our, what other people would call VAs or virtual assistants. And I'm not a fan of the term because it usually leads to what we call virtual abuse. And that means not really engaging with them, not taking an interest in their lives, not finding out where they want to go, not empowering them to do things, or really getting them to just do the projects that you don't want to do yourself and that you're trying to escape from. That's not a great business model, my friends. So we're empowering these individuals with that $50. And if we collect more at once, and they have new opportunities to think through, well, how might we use this? But the goal is to teach everybody in our company to learn to start thinking through what strategies for finances could possibly exist related to this. And of course, then we get to teach them how to plan out how they're going to use it. We get to teach them how to track and see where did this go, how to understand the KPIs. We're teaching individuals to become executives at the best of levels off of budgets that are not life-threatening, or putting the company in a position to where it's like, wait, are you telling me to give $10 million to my virtual assistants, even though I don't know who they are yet? No, I'm saying find ways to create more trust amongst the team members that you work with by empowering them to be leaders and responsible and have true authority and executive ownership behaviors over a little bit, even if it was $1 per day. Even if it was $10 per month, you have the opportunity to empower the people around you to think like a business owner. And when you do that, it changes how they show up and the purpose that they commit towards the projects that you're working on. So how do we align financial planning with long-term goals? That's a very, very good question. In fact, I'm going to reserve that question for Brandon Moon predominantly. I would say become a wise steward. I'm going to leave it at that. You've got to become a wise steward if you want to gain success through ethical means, in my humble opinion. Practical insights to build a more stable and scalable business. I think the boring ones are the ones that most people overlook and underappreciate. Like I already talked about it. Building a team, learning how to recruit. Those are very practical realities that most people avoid. Knowing how to balance a budget, using the Small Business Development Center to some extent it isn't a bad idea, but learning to let go of our opinions is also important. There's a quote, strong opinions loosely held. I hate that quote. I would never loosely hold my baby. Right? I never dangle a child, right? And so, but you can have strong opinions and delicately hold them, right? So I would never drop my child either. If I'm passing my child to somebody else, it's going to be somebody I trust in. The same is true with your opinions as an entrepreneur, whether it's related to finances, whether it's related to growth, whether it's related to your industry. So many people have a tendency to be the doctor who says, well, I'm a doctor, so just trust me. That's an abuse of authority and power. That's they call that in the military pulling rank. As soon as you pull rank, everybody loses respect for you. It's so important to be able to open up our minds and make sure that we're receiving wisdom and guidance from other people, and not just within our organization, because the people within our organization, they have a bias. So if I'm asking my executive assistant, what growth patterns should we be investing in? They're not likely to speak up and say, well, you don't pay me enough money, so why don't you invest it in me? They don't want to lose their job. They don't want to create finances are awkward. You're never supposed to talk about finances with people. And even entrepreneurs struggle with this. So your team members are also going to struggle with the financial conversations. Also, we lean in and we ask our family members and friends, if our family member is not qualified to lead the role, then they're also not qualified to be in the room when we're making those decisions. And I'm also going to parallel that. Imagine that you are a Navy SEAL, or you're in the military, and you have to breach a room that is dangerous. Do you think those people call their spouse up and say, "Hey, honey, do you think I should do this?" No, and they don't even tell them that happened. All right, that you don't bring those things home, as far as I know. And thank you to all those who serve, our country and the countries that are, continuing to make this world a better place. But back to the principle, I'm not trying to say hide what you do in business from your spouse, but when you put your spouse in a position to make those decisions, take it from me. I'm divorced, and this is a big portion of why. I don't want to see other entrepreneurs face that reality, but it is not our spouse's job to make our decisions for our visions. That is a fast way to create conflict that shouldn't exist, and that's not appropriate for the business, and then also hurts the home life. So those are some very practical insights to help you build a more stable and scalable business. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. If you've already done that too, and that's already part of your processes, then as soon as you try to disrupt that, that's going to create some chaos probably, or some conflict. So it might be wise to also discuss those types of opportunities. I wouldn't call it a principle, but that opportunity with a trained professional counselor, a therapist. That leads me to the next one. Coaches. Guys, coaches suck 99% of the time. I'm not sorry about it. It's just the truth. Especially if you have the tendency to say, I have a coach, fire your coach. And so I'm not really telling you what to do as much as warning you. This is a giant red flag. A great coach would help you see that you need more than one coach and more than one mentor. If you have trapped yourself into believing that having one coach all of a sudden automatically qualifies you for success, welcome to the solopreneur or entrepreneur world, where most of those people aren't even coming close to winning. Think about it. How many coaches does LeBron James have, or Victor Wembanyama have, right? Or anybody who's famous that's crushing it in life? Guys, and ask AI. How many coaches they have? Who are their coaches? Most of them have over 100 coaches in their life. Do you need over 100 coaches? No, you don't. Probably not for where you're at. But to be able to open your mind to realize that your coach, if you have one that is kind of controlling what you do, there's also some really sad stories of some famous people who put themselves in that position. Freddie May, is that his name? No, Freddie, whatever his last name is, y'all know who it is. Of Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody, right? That watching that movie was so difficult. But he put himself in a position where he isolated himself to receive advice from one person, and it really, it destroyed his life. And that happens to a lot of us as well, where we put ourselves in a position where we're pigeonholed and we think that the people around us are the people who are serving us well, when in reality, we often put ourselves in a box where we're only getting advice from what's called groupthink. And that's very dangerous. And so getting out of groupthink, learning how to find advice from multiple sources, and really get advice from within, get advice from without, and also be able to create mentorship realities or mastermind experiences where you're able to talk to people who are unassociated with your brand and perhaps a little bit uninterested in what it is you're doing. It is so important to be able to get multiple perspectives. So that's one of the best practical insights to build a more sustainable, more stable, and more scalable brand for yourself is make sure you're leaning into multiple sources and start to piece together, like I said, a governing body for you, individuals who are able to actually have a true vote and overpower your own desires so that you don't put yourself in a position where absolute power corrupts absolutely. I never want that to happen to myself, and I hope it never happens to you. I've seen it happen to way too many entrepreneurs to know that it's something we should all be aware of. So these advice and tips, if you know of an entrepreneur or somebody who needs help in relation to potential financial mistakes, it's probably not a good idea to say, hey, like, you should go watch this because you're struggling. But there's an awesome opportunity to help them realize that Brandon Moon and Jackson Callum, who've combined for, I don't know, I've got 18 years. He's probably got at least 12, and he's been doing things right. We've combined in this process. You guys can connect them to us individually or to this episode and say, there's some really strong principles of value that may help us with our growth or may help you with what you're up to. We would be happy to help them. And if you would like to come on this show and share your vision for the world, it doesn't have to be business oriented, and it doesn't have to be, really, I'm just looking for leaders who want to help the world. This could be young kids who have a vision to cure cancer. Like, come on the show, talk to us about that. That's super cool. We're an open stage. Of course, we love having great leaders who've already established themselves on here too. Those are some of my favorite interviews. But on the flip side, some of my other favorite interviews are the people who are younger and they're not promoting something. They're just excited to do something different in the world. And I want to hear, how are they going to go about figuring that out? And so bring those people over. We'd love to have them on the show, and we will see you guys on the next episode of Vision Pros Live. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent time building out